What's up, everyone? It's Will back with another one of these Brews and Breaks videos, and we're going to keep this one a little bit more refined, not so flashy and whatnot, and just get right to the facts. So if you're ready to dive into the AFC South, grab your drink. Let's get started. All right, Titans. You're going to have a situation where the Titans and the Browns are going to be battling for the overall number one pick. There's a lot of quarterbacks coming out next year. It would be really good if the Titans had a number one pick because they could trade that for a ton of assets. Cam Ward's probably the real deal, right? He's a bona fide leader, fairly accurate, big body quarterback. They're not going to go and draft Arch Manning or Klubnik or any of those guys coming out. I think he is at least a piece they have to work around. Will Levis is now out for the season, so they don't even have him as a backup because he had a shoulder surgery, so I'm not even sure who their backup is at this point. But, they'll get somebody. I think that they have a few weapons, but realistically, outside of Ridley, Tony Pollard, he's fine. The O-line is completely patchwork. The defense is a leaking sieve. They're going to need to be bad in order to be able to have the capital to flip for future draft picks, and a lot of them, because there's so many big quarterbacks coming out next year and so many good wide receivers that if they can end up with the 1 or 2 pick, and they will be battling for the 1 or 2 pick, they'll be able to flip that for a lot of draft capital and completely revamp their team next year. And I think next year, that could be pretty interesting depending on who they draft and what comes out. But for now, 4-13. There's Cam Ward is one of the only guys you should be buying on that team, to be honest with you. And I watch a lot of football. I don't think they're really going to be on my watch list unless Cam Ward's playing somebody that's tangible. So the AFC South might actually be one of the craziest and most competitive divisions in football this year, minus the Titans, right? So I'm going to start with Jacksonville. Jacksonville, obviously, they traded up. They got Travis Hunter, and there hasn't really been a dual threat player since Cordell Stewart, truthfully. Maybe Troy Brown. They used him quite a bit in defense and offense, but still nothing like we've seen with Travis Hunter. Now, obviously, when you look at somebody who wants to play both sides of the ball, you have to look at, can they handle that kind of load? The potential for injury goes through the roof because they're on the field more than everybody else, depending on how he's utilized. And while he'd be a dynamic player, I can't see him really playing cornerback outside of very specific situations, dime packages, things like that. That being said, huge upside for Brian Thomas Jr., right? Because if they're both on the field, somebody's got to be covered by multiple players, which is going to leave somebody open. I think Travis Hunter cutting through the slot and being used in the middle of the field is going to really open up Brian Thomas on the deep ball threat. So, Brian Thomas put up a bunch of numbers last year. In my opinion, he was the best wide receiver out of the rookie class, and I think he's going to have a great second year. Take that in consideration. Now we're talking about Tank Bigsby, who, for all intents and purposes, is an RB1, still listed as an RB2 behind Etienne, but Etienne has injury concerns, and Tank Bigsby is honestly a better player. He is a more dynamic running back. He catches more balls out of the backfield. He's shiftier, and he's not as much of an injury risk. He's bigger, and he's more of a bruiser with some good cuts. So this is a make or break year for Trevor Lawrence. Honestly, if they do not make the playoffs this year, I think it's time for them to move on and get another quarterback. Trade him. I know his contract's kind of crazy, but he might do better in a different team at this point. Their defense is, middle of the road. It's going to give up some points, but they should be able to score enough points to win a lot of games this year. I have them second in the division at 12-5. And also card plays, Brian Thomas Jr., Tank Bigsby, I'm buying heavily into them. I really think they're going to see a really decent upswing in their card market come middle of the season. But yeah, I'm looking at Jacksonville Jaguars 12-5 this season. All right, now for the Texans. CJ Stroud, complete reclamation year. I think they've put enough work into the O-line where he won't be one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. And if he has any time in the pocket, his accuracy is chef's kiss. You're going to give him weapons like Higgins and Noel, along with Nico Collins. You're going to make sure that the RB2 is a healthy Nick Chubb to back up an oft-injured Joe Mixon, that 1-2 combination of two running backs that can not only run downhill, but can cut, make people miss, and catch out of the backfield, watch out. They're also going to have a top 3 defense. They're going to prevent people from scoring. And the weapons at CJ Stroud's disposal, crazy. They're going to have they could have one of the best wide receiver cores in football. They just got to keep them upright. I think that Nick Chubb is going to be a very sneaky sleeper play because Joe Mixon hasn't had a full season in years. And they're going to have a run-first mentality. They're going to ground and pound, and they're going to open up play action. And once they open up play action with those receivers, it's going to be high-scoring events. I picked them to go 15-2, CJ Stroud to be a potential MVP candidate. And if you want to look for some card plays, I mean, obviously try to grab Stroud, right? I've been trying to grab him this offseason, but while down, I've been grabbing PSA 9s because the 10s are still not very affordable, in my opinion, at my budget. I think Jayden Higgins autos are going to be pretty cheap. I think grabbing a little bit of Nick Chubb, just really cheap rookie autos, just to sit on them, might be a pretty sneaky play and quite affordable. But overall, yeah, Houston Texans 15-2, one of the top seeds and a potential MVP candidate in CJ Stroud. Now we're going to flip to the Colts, and the Colts are a really interesting team. As a Pats fan, F the Colts. Just saying. I'll cheers myself to that one. I think after 6 games, they could be potentially 3-3. They have a pretty decent defense, and they have a ton of weapons. I think Adonai Mitchell is going to have a big second year. No matter who the quarterback is, I think he's been working really, really hard in the offseason to just be better at his craft. But they have a lot of weapons. I mean, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, big body tight end. Alex Pierce, who scored a ton of touchdowns and had a ton of yards last year. Jonathan Taylor. Questions the quarterback, right? Anthony Richardson just cannot stay on the field. And for a big body bruiser, Cam Newton style guy, he just can't stay healthy, which is crazy to me. He also has accuracy concerns. So depending on how his offseason program looked, I think this is Daniel Jones's job for the taking. And to be honest with you, I think he's set up with more success for the Colts than he was with the Giants. I wasn't a big Daniel Jones fan when they drafted him. I mean, that was a super reach trading up for somebody like that. But Daniel Jones, if he takes that starting position, this team's going to surprise some people. That being said, I think they're going 9-8. They have a shot at getting in on the wild card team, but a lot of things are going to have to fall their way, or some sort of major injury is going to have to happen. But I bet on them to make the playoffs. After Daniel Jones was signed, just because of, there's a flyer, the odds were really, really good. So, I mean, why not throw a couple bucks on it? But as far as card plays go, I'm buying low on Daniel Jones because if this could be a serious Joe Flacco situation when he was in the Browns the first time and just won a ton of games. And, there was a huge upside. Not that Joe Flacco ever had major card interest, but Daniel Jones has had some buyers over the years. So it could definitely increase his value. Anthony Richards, I mean, come on. His prices have absolutely cratered. Scoop and stash. You can get PSA 10s of Anthony Richardson right now for $20. If you can get a card for under the cost of grading and it's a 10 or even a 9, why not buy a few of them, sit on them? If he starts and somehow becomes Cam Newton or something like that and scores 10 rushing touchdowns and stays healthy, I mean, his cards will soar, but why not buy a little low on him? Adonai Mitchell autos, get him really cheap right now. I think that's a really low buy with a huge upside. And Tyler Warren, once his cards are out there, I mean, he has a chance to be another big body receiver, middle of the field, red zone kind of threat. So, touchdowns typically equals money. So I think those are some pretty good card buys there. But overall, Colts 9-8, 3-3 start at the beginning. Make some things difficult, but borderline playoff team. All right, so quick final standings recap. We got Texans coming out 15-2 with a potential MVP season for CJ Stroud. We got Jaguars coming out 12-5. The whole season is on Trevor Lawrence, and this is a make or break year for him, but Brian Thomas Jr., major breakout candidate. Colts 9-8, middling of the pack, maybe if things fall right, a wild card team. quarterback roulette, who knows? But there's some sneaky weapons on there, and depending on how the quarterback play sneaks out, that could be a potential, wild card team. Titans 4-13, shooting for the 1 or 2 pick this year. Cam Ward is basically the only guy that's on there to collect, and hopefully they don't destroy him and ruin him for the future, because he could potentially be their future quarterback. But yeah, that's where I'm seeing that layout. Texans, Jaguars absolutely going to the playoffs, and Colts, maybe. But overall, which teams are you buying into this year? What do you think of these standings? How do you think this is going to play out? I definitely want to hear your thoughts. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Let us know how we're doing, and just engage. But until next time, keep sipping and ripping.